It's the start of a new year as I record this, and I know, some of us are thinking about kind of what matters most, what we want to do in the next 12 months and all that kind of stuff. So I thought it would be a good chance to explore stuff around this idea of what it means to have a priority and to set priorities, and how we can know what our priorities are, what they should be, what they could be, all that kind of stuff. So that's what we're going to be getting into today. But before I kind of delve into the main bulk of this episode, I just want to say a massive thank you and a welcome to Sylvia Sanderson, who became a supporting member of the Gentle Rebel podcast on Patreon over this past week. Really, really great to have you on board, Sylvia. Thank you for your email as well. Really, really cool to hear from you. I basically use Patreon to share an entire bonus podcast feed where each week I basically take a related topic to the main episode that I'm kind of put out, and I share more kind of candid, personal, in-depth thoughts about that thing, about something related to what we've been talking about in the main episode. Also put bonus episodes, music-related stuff, other bits and pieces on there. So it's just $3 a month. You can get access to the archive of all the past extended play episodes and future stuff that I post there as well. This week's extended play is about people pleasing, and the kind of revelations I've been experiencing recently or over the past 6 months or so through counselling about my own type of people pleasing, which has had a significant impact on my life so far, and some experiments that I'm going to be trying to kind of just do to play around with in order to engage in the process of recovery from being a people pleaser. I've heard many people talk about being a recovering people pleaser. I kind of assumed that I was that, but it turned out that I hadn't entered that recovery stage just yet. I was just a people pleaser. Well, I am just a people pleaser. I think, once a people pleaser, always a people pleaser. But in that kind of sense of recovery, you can find ways to sort of cope with it, to deal with it, to manage it better. So I'll share a little clip from the extended play episode at the end of this one. But if you want to hear what I have to say about people pleasing and all that kind of stuff, then come and join patreon.com/Andy Mort. It's patreon.com/Andy Mort. Right, I'm not recording this week's episode at home, so I'm not with my piano. After saying last week about things are going to be changing, I'm going to be doing the episodes from behind my piano and playing a few songs and that kind of stuff. Quite funny that the very next episode is coming from elsewhere. The ironic twists and turns of intention and commitment. I'll probably be back behind my piano next week and be playing some songs then. Thanks to all of you who got in touch after that last one to say that you enjoyed that kind of vibe. So that's cool. That's encouraging. So priorities. Do you ever think about what it means to set priorities for your life? And even how the idea of setting multiple priorities is a bit of an impossibility. It's a trap. It's a tripping hazard, I suppose. As I tend to do with these words that I focus on as themes for these episodes, I started by reflecting on the actual meaning of the word itself. Priority, the root of that word, priority. Prior, meaning earlier, first, former, superior, better, before, in front of. It's the same as pre and even per, as in per, P-E-R, which I found quite interesting. Permission, grant the freedom to engage in the mission. Percussion, to go forwards, and cutter or quash, to strike, to beat, to smite something. Brilliant. But yeah, prior, before, earlier, superior, in front of, and ity, I-T-Y, is the condition or quality of being. So a priority is the condition or quality of something before other things. And in that respect, as has been said by other people with far better minds than mine, you can't have more than one priority. That's kind of by definition when we talk about having multiple priorities, or, what are my priorities, we basically eliminate all the meaning from the word, because it's impossible to have more than one priority. A priority, by definition, is one thing that stands out ahead on its own. Otherwise, everything is just, equal. So I guess the question we might ask is, why have a priority? As we look ahead to the next 12 months, for example, what would be the point in identifying a priority for the year, or a priority for the next week, or a priority for the next month, or whatever? What sort of things do we talk about as priorities? Where do you use that word? It might be a priority to get a new job. My family is a real priority at the moment. My relationships are a real priority. My creativity, my health, redecorating the house. These are all priorities for me. And what sort of things do we talk about as being or as not being priorities? Because we say that too, don't we? Like, oh, my garden, it's just not a priority for me right now. Changing jobs it's not a priority. Like, it's something I'd like to do at some point, but it's not a priority for me at the moment. Going to the gym, it's just not a priority for me. It takes some courage to admit this kind of thing as well. The stuff that isn't a priority for us, the things that we maybe don't have the capacity for, or they're just not that far up on the radar of things we want to affect right now. And when we allow ourselves this permission, that freedom to engage in the mission of identifying what doesn't matter, so that we can find the one thing that does matter, we can be more present, we can be more intentional, we can be less anxious and torn and split between these things that are on our radar, these things we want to give our attention to. It's important to get clear on something at this point, though. Life is not simple, and when we're looking at priorities through a doing lens, so things we want to prioritize doing, it would seem apparent that really the only people that get to focus on one priority when it comes to doing stuff are pretty much the privileged and the foolish. Those who have so much help that they're free to not worry about all the other stuff, all the other things that are, the rest of us need to worry about. Or those so single-minded that they neglect everything else and probably end up, in a heap of mess at some point down the line. If you're free to prioritize doing just one thing in life, then there is probably something either dysfunctional or lucky going on. The kind of priority I'm more interested in, or that I'm talking about in this episode, is kind of defined more in the essence of spirit than of like materialism, I suppose. If we're to nurture meaning, clarity, and growth in our lives, all important parts of a healthy life, then priorities matter, but it's the spirit of priority and not the doing side of it that I want to focus on. For the past 8 years or so, it's about 8 years, I think I've set, I've gone about very intentionally setting goals for the year at the end of the previous year, going into the next year. I haven't done it this year, not because I made a conscious choice not to. It was kind of on my to-do list for the end of last year, but I didn't actually get round to it. I suppose it wasn't a priority on my list of things to do. It wasn't up there as something that I was like, right, I'm going to set aside this time and make sure that I prioritize it. And as I started reflecting, I asked myself, why isn't that a priority? It's been a priority, for the last 7-8 years. Do you know what? I don't have an answer. I don't have an answer to that question. Why was it not a priority this year? I'd thought, I'd probably come up with some profound anti-status quo, anti-goal culture thing because everybody's doing it. But no, I think goal setting is great. It's really, it's a part of what I encourage other people to do. And when we're wanting to push on in specific ways and we need to focus really clearly on getting to a particular landmark at specific times, then, it's a really good process to go through. And I suppose, I'm moving in the direction that I set for myself last year. I'm enjoying the pace, the speed of travel that I'm moving along the path at. And I guess my priority is creating space to be, and it's not putting pressure on myself within that context of, really specific time-bound goals that I'm like, I have to get this done at this time. Actually, more my priority is opening up the margin around the tendency to do and to allow myself the freedom to be, to play, to enjoy, to step back from that pressure of doing, to follow my curiosity when it wants to take me to new places, I guess. Because I've already established my trajectory when it comes to building the, other parts of my life. So that, like coaching, for example, the coaching bit of my business, playing music, adding music in some way to the podcast, which was a priority like last year. And so I added it to Patreon, and then have added it to the podcast. But, it's kind of just one of the things that has happened. And I'm doing what I do with the podcast and with the Haven as well, and with all that stuff in a kind of habitual way where I've established rhythms where I know that movement is happening, and I'm not having to put my foot on the accelerator. I'm not having to really throttle things. And so it's given me that freedom to think, actually, what do I want my priority to be? And actually what I need to make my priority. After putting together Serenity in the Trenches, the series that I put together at the end of last year, it kind of became apparent to me that I still have a tendency to burn myself out with the to-dos. It's probably quite a natural thing for me to set myself goals and to be quite hard on myself in terms of saying, you need to do this, you need to get that done by this time, and all that kind of thing. And actually the thing that I need is to give myself the kind of permission to be, to have that margin. Because, when I burn myself out with things to do, I kind of end up doing more of what I don't need to do, but perhaps have come to believe I should be doing, and fewer of the things that I would like to do, but don't feel like are productive uses of my time or whatever. So my priority this year is really just to continue pulling things back, removing stuff, creating space. So what is this kind of priority that we're talking about? This kind of non-doing priority, this value, I suppose. It's a value, it's a filter. It's something to hold decisions and choices and behaviors and opportunities and so on up against. It sets our intention at our most basic core. So rather than having things we need to do each day, we say, are the things I'm going to do today consistent with my priority? Or does this opportunity that has landed in my email inbox fit with what I'm committed to this month, this year? Does it fit with that priority that I've intentioned myself within? So for me, my big priority is coming into focus as returning to self. It sounds kind of abstract, and well, it is. But after my conversation with Jacob Nordby last year, and as I've gone through counselling, as I mentioned, over the past 6 months, this idea of coming back to myself, returning to the core, my little creative inner Andy, this keeps cropping up everywhere. And I'm finding the freedom to say yes to things again that allow me to release the shackles of expectation and people pleasing and those rules that you kind of expect that you have to play by. Those things that, as you get older, you like become sort of sucked into, and you lose that curiosity, that deep kind of childlike joy and all of that stuff. And I find this exciting. It's fun. It's kind of cool to see what I'm going to say yes to and what I'm going to say no to. I guess it's almost a process of sort of rebuilding a relationship with who I am. getting to know those real parts, discovering it. I don't think it's even a case of rediscovering stuff. It's like actually just enjoying that process of uncovering it and experimenting. Not that it's coming to a place of like, discovering who I am, but it's creating who I am in conjunction with my real values and all that sort of stuff. Those real feelings, those real dreams and joys. So why find a priority that is outside of the doing sphere? Well, first, it can be freeing. It potentially removes us from that busy bubble where everything is about how much we get done. It becomes about the kind of life that we're designing, not the list of things that we are doing. It places us on a values-based existence rather than an experience-based existence. And that just makes us more interesting human beings, I reckon. If you've ever been stuck with someone like in a conversation who's just talking about, their doing and their having priorities, it can get pretty dull. If they're just listing off all these things that they've done or experienced or whatever. Whereas if you converse with someone on a kind of values level about, why things matter to them, about what kind of world they'd like to be a part of kind of bringing into existence and creating, it can be a lot more interesting. I don't want to know about the places you went or the people you met when you went traveling. I want to know why you went. I want to know what you learned about yourself and about life itself as you went. I'm not impressed by what you've done. I'm impressed by how those things have impacted you as a person. So coming back to that idea I spoke about in last week's episode, this is the water in which we swim. Our priority is really the spirit by which we are living right now. Perhaps it's in the spirit of health or relationships, creativity, serenity, adventure, connection, freedom. This kind of priority setting is also truly transformational at a core level. When you think about how much we can grow in the next year, 5 years, 10 years, if we establish a priority each year and filter and design life through that lens, the difference between where we are now and where we can be then is huge. This longer term perspective demonstrates that, we don't have to believe in doing or being everything right away. Listen to the biggest point of discontent for you right now. Maybe it's your health. Maybe it's relationships, certain relationships. Maybe it's your sense of creativity, your work, your family, your marriage, whatever it might be that is causing you the greatest kind of anxiety. Make that your priority filter. Then find a way to make everything you do serve that priority in some way. It might just be a mindset shift. Like if creativity is your biggest source of discontent and you have to spend 8 hours a day at work doing what you see as a completely uncreative job, find ways to bring creativity into that environment. Experiment. Give yourself the freedom to prioritize creativity as the filter through which you see that activity. You might be finding things to take photos of at work, if that's appropriate, or stories to write poems about, conversations that then turn into things like songs or whatever, or just a way to turn your commute into more of a creative journey to and from work each day. When we turn a value into a priority, we can bring it into everything. Immerse all our activities within that particular, that water. And eventually it will become assimilated into our lives so that it is an important part of the life that we have designed, but it no longer needs to be an active priority. And at that point, we can raise something else to become that priority, that first thing, the value that we prioritize above all else in the next season. When I'm working with coaching clients, I like to establish a kind of overarching priority. It's the first stage in setting meaningful goals that will help them get from where they are to where they want to be. And then we kind of break things down so that we go from the grand arena, the health, the creativity, the career, the relationships, or whatever it might be. And then we kind of hone in, we focus on specific actions and habits that will contribute to kind of moving the ball on in that overall area. And I find habits are really fascinating micro priorities. They're the things we want to bake into our lives that serve that overall priority. And they focus us on how we're going to go about approaching the habit. If my priority is health, what habits might I build into my morning routine, for example? How will this impact my approach to my job, my eating habits? Or if my priority is my relationships, what habits might I build to make meaningful time with my most important person or people? How might it change other habits? Like, how might my morning routine change to reflect the importance of my priority? Relationships. How will I prioritize relationships within that morning routine or whatever it is? A priority needs to be kind of positively positioned as well. You know, it's a spirit of the spirit we want rather than the spirit or rather than the thing we don't want. Like the demon. We're pretty good as humans at stating things that we are to which we're opposed. It seems more comfortable to say, you know, well, I don't want that, than it is to say, I really want that. It can feel vulnerable and scary to admit the things that we want, just in case we fail or disappointment kicks in or whatever. At least if we're focused on stuff we don't want, we're able to pitch ourselves in a position of kind of disempowerment from the start, because we can put the responsibility into the hands of something else that might mean that we can't get what we want or whatever. So, yeah, in the kind of spirit of positivity or the positive framing of things, we want health. We're prioritizing health rather than, you know, I don't want to feel like crap. There's a lot more scope in the spirit of health. In kind of everything that we do. You know, we can carry out all our actions in this spirit to make the next decision in the spirit of what is best for our health, rather than acting out of a fear of this demon of the looming fear that we might get ill or feel low or get put in a bad mood, whatever. You know, in this light, we take responsibility for our priority and for what we have the power to affect. It acknowledges that the priority won't always be easy or present, but we always have the ability to choose things in the spirit of the priority. You know, even if you're ill, you can choose to do something within the spirit of health in that moment. You know, it might not make you feel sort of 100% better, but you can do things that are going to contribute to the spirit of health. But if you're ill and your priority is not being ill, you've kind of failed. Cool. So I hope this has made some kind of sense and been helpful in some way. I found it quite a tricky theme to explore, to be honest. It's been a bit kind of clunky. It's not flowed quite as well as other episodes. But I kind of hope that means it's one of those that feels weird and bad to me, but actually lands well. That this seems to happen. But we'll see. We'll see how it goes down. As I mentioned earlier, I've done an extended play episode over on Patreon, which is on the general theme of people pleasing, which unraveled itself as a linked idea to all of this stuff around priorities. I was thinking about my own priority this year, and here's just a little snippet from that episode, just to kind of give you a sense of what that's about. Sometimes it's driven by a genuine empathy and compassion, a desire for someone to feel better. You reactively place their needs before your own and even give in to satisfy their wants, not their actual genuine needs. Genuine needs might be actually for you to step back and stop mollycoddling them. You care about others to the extent where it's almost parasitical in nature, and you can only be happy or feel content if it feels like the other person is doing okay. Cool. So if you want to hear the whole episode, just go to patreon.com/Andy Mort. and become a supporting member there. It's just $3 a month. You'll get the entire archive of past private episodes as well. And also a shout out in a future episode like Sylvia did in this episode. So, as I say, patreon.com/Andy Mort. Thank you so much for listening today. Love to just ask you a big favour before we go. The best thing you can do to support the podcast, other than becoming a patron on Patreon, is to just rate and comment on the show in your chosen podcast application. Wherever you're listening to this right now, just go and search for the Gentle Rebel podcast there and leave a quick rating. And comment if you've got time. That'd be amazing. That just kind of helps to get this show and previous episodes of it into more of the ears of people searching for help and support with this, with the kind of topics that we're exploring here each week. I'd be really grateful if you could do that. It'd be amazing. And thank you to all of those of you who have done that already. It means the world. Cool. So I'll be back again next time with another episode of the podcast, hopefully from behind my piano, and I'll share some music with you. Until then, do remember that you are an artist, that the world needs your art. Now go and make somebody's day. Goodbye. Can all be angels in disguise.